Hey guys, Toast here. Welcome to another episode of Is It Over or Underpowered, where we dissect the least and most used weapon variants for each class in Battlefield 1, and discuss if the weapons are really that underpowered or overpowered, as well as what I believe DICE may be able to do to make the weapons fall more in line with others for the class. All statistics are courtesy of BattlefieldTracker.com, and are based on the amount of time spent using each weapon, not necessarily how many kills have been achieved with those weapons, though I should mention that the kill statistics do tend to strongly mimic the time spent statistics for nearly all weapons. Today's topic of discussion is going to be the MP18 experimental variant, which historically and consistently since launch has been the single least used variant of all SMGs for the assault class. Now I'm going to cover the SMGs and shotguns separately for the assault class, since they're technically two different classes of weapons with entirely different mechanics. Now we're going to make the baseline assumption that if all weapons were perfectly balanced, given that at the time this video is being released, including all current DLC weapons, there are a total of 9 variants of SMGs for the assault class, theoretically we should be seeing around a roughly 11% usage time for each SMG. According to the actual usage statistics, the MP18 experimental variant is being used by roughly 0.2 to 0.4% of the Battlefield 1 community while running SMGs. In fact, in the roughly 7 months since Battlefield 1 has been released, this weapon has only hit 1% or higher usage time a handful of times, maxing out at 1.3%, and all within the first month of release, and since then, only very occasionally has it passed 0.5% usage. There are a couple other SMGs that are used infrequently, but none at the almost completely non-existent level of that of the MP18 experimental. In looking at its usage graph, the MP18 experimental is the green line at the very bottom that never once goes over any other weapon with the exception of the Ribby roll on the very first day it was released, and the Hellriegel defensive also on the same day it was released, simply because not enough people had either weapon unlocked yet. Let's start with what we know about the MP18 as a whole compared to other SMGs. We know that the MP18 is a close-range oriented weapon with some mid-range capabilities, though obviously the Automatica will best it in close range, while the Hellriegel and the Ribby roll will both have the edge for various reasons at mid-range. We know that with the exception of the Hellriegel, it has the largest magazine size for an SMG at 32, and a moderate to high rate of fire when compared to weapons from other classes, but low when compared to other SMGs. We also know that the weapon tends to fall toward the high end of the spectrum when it comes to recoil. The MP18 as a whole, however, even when not accounting for the trench variant's benefits, has some of the best overall hipfire spread. For all intents and purposes, the weapon cements itself as a close to mid-range option, being a solid choice for versatility, but bested in individual situations by other SMGs. Let's delve a little bit deeper into the differences between the variants themselves. The trench variant is going to be the obvious favorite for close-range engagements because of its favorable hipfire spread, and it's potentially preferred even by those who don't hipfire much due to it being the only one that has iron sights. That, combined with the fact that it's the default weapon unlocked so players get comfortable with it quickly, makes it a solid choice. The optical variant, for those who don't mind the design of the optical sight, is going to give you better ADS spread while standing still, and the best ADS spread while moving, making it the clear choice for the player who's on the move but also needs to ADS while moving for those mid-range shots. The experimental variant, however, is the distinct outlier of the group for a couple reasons. The first and most obvious is that it's the only variant that's burst-fired instead of fully automatic. This means that while you may have more control over the variant, it's highly unlikely that you're going to achieve the maximum rate of fire for the weapon, because getting that exact precise timing on every burst is virtually impossible. The weapon also has a longer long reload at 3.3 seconds, where the other two variants are at 2.96 seconds. Where the variant tries to make up for all this is with its better horizontal recoil at about a 30% decrease, the best ADS spread while standing still, and the best spread decrease. Based on these benefits, it would seem that the experimental variant is designed to be a stationary mid-range variant of a close to mid-range weapon for a class that's generally supposed to be on the move. Now, to answer the question, is the weapon underpowered? It would seem to me that based on what we've discussed so far, the MP18 experimental is a little bit underpowered in its current state. It's unable to match the rate of fire of the other variants, making it less useful in close range. It has a longer long reload, the exact same damage drop-off as the other variants, making it no more effective at mid-range from a pure damage perspective, and needs to be fired while standing still to get the most tangible benefit out of it. In general, the weapons for the assault class, perhaps with the exceptions of the new Hellriegel defensive and the Ribby roll, are designed as on-the-move weapons, and the MP18 experimental breaks from this without offering enough benefits to warrant doing so. So how can DICE go about fixing this? Well, they would have to give the variant something that's going to make it worth using, while not making it much more powerful as to not throw off the balance between the experimental and the other variants of the MP18. To me, there are a couple changes that I feel could make the variant more interesting and perhaps a little bit more worthwhile to use. I think the focus of these changes should be to make the weapon more mid-range viable instead of increasing its close-range strength. The first change that I would make is to increase the variant's minimum damage to 15 instead of its current minimum damage of 13.5. This would alter the variant from an 8-shot kill at range to a 7-shot kill, making it more useful for mid-range targets while not making it any more lethal at close range. This would also put the minimum damage on par with that of the Ribby roll, which is much more suited for mid-range engagements. In addition to that, I would also drop the long reload time to match the other two variants of the MP18 because, quite honestly, I can't figure out why exactly this difference in variants is necessary in the first place. The final change I would make would be to drop the vertical recoil of the weapon to make it easier to keep the target in your sights at mid-range, where this variant of this weapon should ideally excel. These three changes combined would make for a weapon variant that can hold its own at mid-range notably better than the other two variants, while having its same detriments at close range, and not being significantly better than the Hellriegel or Ribby roll at medium range, essentially making the MP18 experimental a burst fire option that more players may actually want to use. Now I want to know how you feel about using the MP18 experimental variant. How would you go about changing it to increase its usage without making it unbalanced? Let me know in the comments. If you liked the video, please leave a like, and if you want to see more content, please subscribe. Thank you guys so much for watching, this is Toast, and I'll talk to you soon.